They said no originally to put it on YouTube. And I told our boss that I was like, just fire me, just put it on. And if I get in trouble, I hate it here. I want to leave because like I just felt like such a weirdo there, and just like I was over it. And then it blew up.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do. I'd like to know the things that specifically make you you.
Hey, I'm Tim Barnes. You are the genre, and in each episode of this podcast, I ask a great guest about the first genres that inspired them, the first crafts that they pursued, and how they feel about those first crafts now. This episode, I'm talking to comedy writer and animation director Grant Lindahl, a friend I made when I started working at a little place called Comedy Central. I don't even remember what year. I feel like maybe 2018, 2017? Anyway, it was fun, first of all. I made some of the best work of my career there, but it was also kind of surreal and strange because I was doing comedy at night and working at the comedy company by day. So sometimes I would see friends of mine on a PowerPoint presentation in a big conference room, or I would be in that conference room and then audition for a festival in which my coworkers are the judges of. And out of all of the fantastic, hilarious, absurd people that I worked with at Comedy Central Digital, Grant was the true oddball. And I am like glue for oddballs. And I'm not saying oddball in a derogatory way. I'm just saying that I have an infinity gauntlet full of friends that I've made at jobs, bus stops, and bathrooms. And Grant is one of them. And we even stayed in touch and collaborated on some stuff after I left Comedy Central. When the pandemic first hit, he reached out to me and said, hey, I'd love to work with you on something. And I couldn't go out to do shows anymore. And I said, you know what? Maybe I can finally get into making a comic. I've always loved comics, and I've always wanted to try to make a newspaper-style comic strip, or these days, you make them webcomic. So we collaborated basically all throughout the pandemic on a comic that I created called Uncertain Life. And we made 100 issues of that. So yeah, Grant is a comedy writer, animation director, and creator of the award-winning Comedy Central animated series Tales from the Truth. He's also collaborated with MTV, Amazon, Atlantic Records, T-Mobile, Barnes & Noble, Broadway Video, and more. What's it like to be an artist now after a year of strikes, as AI is on the rise, and as inflation and recession are the two words that linger in my mind? I find out from Grant in this interview. Grant, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been like a year. I don't know. What's time?
I know. 2023 was a crazy year for me. I imagine it was a crazy year for you with all of the strikes. You work in the more of the animated sphere of things, which I think because the animation unions aren't connected as much as we would like with the WGA and other things, I would think that maybe there was more opportunity for you maybe. But yeah, just let me know how that was for you.
So like I'm kind of a unique position where like I'm not like a studio guy, like I'm a director, but like I'm more of a known as like an indie guy where the studios kind of come to me and they see like my projects and they're like, do you have a show? Or I partner with a lot of writers. And because it is animation, you can still kind of pitch it to studios, but because everybody was so cautious and like all the, the writers I partner with or my management, we couldn't take it to anybody because you don't want to be seen go into a studio or be on a list somewhere, no matter what. And they all said, like, they're like, oh, it's animation. It's probably fine. But because, like the writer strike affects everybody, and so what happened to us, because I was taking a pilot with comedian Graham Barrett and we had it ready to go. And then the strike happened and everybody was like really cautious about spending. And then after the strike ended, we actually took it around and nobody's buying anything because they're like, oh, we got to play it really safe. We need to reboot Ted. We need to, and it's so funny because like I've had meetings now and everybody's just ultra cautious. They're scared of any creative. And so when you come in, they're like really worried about taking any swings right now because I guess they got to make that money.
Yeah, and that was already the case a bit where it felt like you had to front load everything with a big name actor and already have so many things attached to a project for it to really get across the line. And now with it's almost like a sort of conservatism that you're that you're describing of like not wanting to take as many risks as once was the hallmark of streaming era, which is like, oh yeah, we can throw all kinds of stuff at the wall. Now it's like, bring us the Big Bang Theory.
Bring us Young Sheldon animated. Yeah. That will happen one day.
Not that the big, I don't want to sound like someone who's, anti Big Bang Theory.
I'll watch it on plane.
Yeah. It's one of the like shows like that get a lot of flack from people. I call it coming back from a hard days of work, some sort of labor, and you crack open a beer. These are the shows that, there's no complaints from.
My grandfather was an electrician for like 40 years, and his favorite show was the Ray Romano show.
Yeah, everybody loves Raymond. It's a great show.
Yeah. And so he watched that after a hard day, and he literally would crack up his 50th beer of the day. So I think I'm just saying you don't have to be drunk to watch that show, but it really helps.
Yeah. It sounds like you really, really loved Raymond. I want to set the tone of the realm that is Grant Lindahl, because we first met at Comedy Central working in the digital space. You were already there before I got there. And immediately I was like, oh, clearly Grant is the oddball character in the sitcom. You were the fringe animation guy, always like amazing, strange pitches, always amazing, strange ideas. And I love that you found major success in some of the things that you developed there, which feel connected to the genre that is you. But before we dive into that, I want to ask, what was the first genre that caught your attention as a child?
I was watching Barney, and I wanted to be an actor. Straight up.
I was a big Barney fan too. What was the excitement about Barney for you?
I don't know. Probably because my parents don't pay attention to me, and that Barney paid attention to those kids. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. Like I don't know. Vanity, I guess, as like a 2-year-old. Like,
there is something about Barney being a collective hallucination. Like this is described in the theme song for Barney. Barney is a dinosaur from our imagination. This isn't the imagination of one child. This is a group imagination. And I feel like that's the magic of the show, is that all of your peers in elementary preschool are imagining this dinosaur together.
Well, like when people like smoke DMT, they see the purple lady. They all like say that they meet this purple lady. Those kids were on DMT, but it was in the form of a dinosaur. Like that's what it was.
How intense was your Barney love though? Like there were dolls. I want to say action figures, but that's toxic masculinity talking. I had Barney dolls when I was a kid.
It wasn't that much like love of Barney. It was just that maybe it was just the first TV show that I was regularly allowed to watch, but like, yeah, I was like super into doing that. And I don't know. And then, years later, finding out about like school plays and stuff. And that was like, I still am like super pissed that I didn't get picked for my like first grade Christmas pageant to play any of the Christmas characters. I was just in the choir. And I still remember this like mean blonde Texas woman who I was like, I could be a reindeer too. And she's just like, no, we're good. We don't need you. You swarthy child. You swarthy Greek looking child. We don't.
What was the racial dynamic of where you grew up?
So I grew up in the Air Force for half my life. And then we moved to a farm in northern Appalachia. So like, you know, it was really diverse in the Air Force. But then when I was on school on base, is extremely diverse. You know, it was kids from everywhere. My earliest like daycare, it was like on like a reservation in South Dakota, and so it was like a lot of kids who were like Blackfoot reservation and stuff like that, and just all over. But then when we moved to Texas, I went to school off base, and it was just like, I don't know, like Aryan looking West Texas kids. Not a huge. It was Abilene, so it's not like a huge, like, it's like kind of northern Midland Texas. I just remember it was very culturally different from what I grew up, and so you kind of are like, my brother had like a speech impediment, and he had to go to speech therapy in like West Texas, and he has the strangest accent now. Like you can't understand him. Like it's just having like West Texas women try to teach him like how to say words properly, and it's all he sounds like Boomhauer.
Oh, okay,
yeah. He sounds like Boomhauer, kind of, a little bit, you know.
Yeah, that's as long as you understand him, that's all that matters.
Yeah, but then so when we got out of the Air Force, my mom's side of the family is Croatian and super Catholic. And so I moved to a very like Pentecostal and Baptist area.
Oh,
and my family's pretty European, you know, like Mediterranean or whatever. And yeah, that don't fly. Like I got called like an idol worshiper, and a lot of people thought that we were Jewish too, and they'd like come at us the time. Yeah. It was crazy because it's just nobody moves to like where my parents bought a farm. So like you could literally be like the most, like, it doesn't matter like your ethnicity at all. They're gonna like lose their minds because nobody's there. They're like, who are these outsiders? I remember because like the first time we encountered kids to our hometown, so I was like 12. Me and my brother, my dad had just bought this farm, and he got out of the Air Force, and we were in this creek that runs across our farm. And it was technically, that part of the creek was ours. But I think for like, I don't know, 50 years, kids had been using it. And like, we didn't care. Like, people can use it, whatever. You know, it's a pretty big farm. But we were in the creek, and these kids, we were like fishing for like these crawdad, like, you know what, crayfish or whatever. Yeah. And we were putting them in buckets, just dicking around because there's nothing to do. And this kid like threw a rock at us, and he's like, "What do you guys think you're doing in my creek?" And we had to like fight these kids. Like, it was the first fight I had ever been in. And it was just, that was like the introduction to my hometown, and just wild.
How old were you?
I was like 12 going on 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is like, so you probably discovered Barney traveling with your family in the military.
Yeah. I went to like 8 different schools.
Okay.
So it was, I was born in South Dakota, moved to Texas, moved to Chicago, well, I say Chicago, but it was really, you know, Naperville. Yeah. So that's the lamest thing to say. So Naperville, the hard, mean streets of Naperville, you know, and then Kansas City, and then so to relate to the genre kept going until 9/11. So like, I wanted to be an actor until like it started changing after 9/11, because I was school president in my school in Kansas City. I was like I was like really confident, and like I wouldn't say you're not cool when you're in elementary school, but I was just very confident with myself. And then that all changed, and like acting was not for me. But yeah, and so then we moved to Western Maryland, right on the border of West Virginia, on this mountain called the Catoctin Mountains. And I really still loved theater and really want to be like a theater kid. And I was doing, I found out you could do plays. And like before that, I was doing like whatever opportunity I could in elementary school, which wasn't a lot. Like I was school president, so I gave like speeches and like any chance to talk. I love talk. And so like I was in middle school, and I auditioned for a production of Annie, and I got like businessman number 2. And during the production, I didn't really have any friends. My school was kind of rough. You know, it wasn't that nice. It was kind of a rough, poor area. and I was backstage, and the guy that played Rooster in Annie. Can we curse on this, or is this like a clean podcast?
No, you can curse. I might bleep it, but you can curse.
Yeah, feel free to bleep it. But he asked if I had a dick or a vagina backstage.
Okay, I love that we went through that, and you went through the funniest things to possibly bleep. We were going to be so curious as to what you just said.
Yeah. He asked if I had that, and I said that I had a vagina because I was nervous. Because this is like month 2 into middle school, in where all the kids don't sound like me, I don't look like them, and like I have my and then he goes, "Oh snap! He said that he has a vagina," and then I said, "No, I never have a." And then the whole production just started like calling me Vagina Boy, and then pretty much from like then on until I went to college, I was called that. And so
okay, yeah. you laid down the most fascinating origin story I think that I've heard to date. But let's backtrack a little bit. You were traveling a lot as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You found joy in Barney. The reason you found joy in Barney is because there was consistency to it, and that this seemed like a dinosaur that cared about you. So that's interesting, because television does allow you that. Same time, same channels, wherever you're going, you can always rely on the magic of Barney, this communal hallucination among children. And then
the DMT Barney dinosaur. Yep.
Yeah. And then the first craft that you pursued was acting. You really wanted to do that. And what do you think the key was for the reason that you wanted to pursue that?
I don't know. I think I just really want people to like me desperately, even from like a young age. And I don't know. I think there's just mental illness.
There is something like, because I got into the world of stand-up comedy, and there is something about wanting to present something, the urge to do that. There's, as even the most pleasant people with the most normal backgrounds, there's something going on. Like, why do you want to do this so badly?
Oh, yeah. I mean, after the '08 crash, like everybody was like, I'm doing stand up now. Like that's like why. Like,
I think, I've never been able to put that together in that exact way. But like, why are there so many people pursuing comedy? Like, it's a boom since that time that you just mentioned. And it doesn't really seem to have faded. I think it
has. I think it has faded.
I think the like people who get into stand-up has faded in a sense, but comedy as a whole, like everything on TikTok and everything, I don't think it's like everyone knows a comedian now. Yeah.
I don't know. I just keep thinking of, so I used to hang out at this comedy club in New York called The Creek and the Cave. And it was just kind of like a rat hole, but it was awesome because it was just filled with insane people. And I would just watch the open mics and draw people all the time. And at least once a week, it would be like some like dirtbag who was like, I just found out that this girl that I've been seeing for 2 months is pregnant. And so I came here and I'm doing comedy now. And I was like, oh God, no. There was a guy I used to, from everything from that to like, there was a dude who like did stand up and then like died in the bathroom. Like I saw him do stand up and then he went to the bathroom and he died. That was crazy. He like told this incoherent story about Farrah Fawcett and then he was really, really fat and they had to like carry him out. That was crazy.
That is something where the idea of doing an open mic set and then dying is that everyone knows what their last words were. His last words were something about Farrah Fawcett and cookies. You know what I mean?
Is that him having sex with Farrah Fawcett, and it lives written free in my brain. And then there's also a guy who I have like a ton of drawings of because I draw all these guys like before I'd go up, and because my attention span's so bad, and you get so tired of just watching a guy work out his set over and over. But it was this guy named like Cy Twombly, and he ended up murdering his mom. And like, I don't know how this is relevant to your podcast. I'm so sorry, but
no, I think we were trying to talk about proving the point that people who pursue presentational arts, who want to be the center of attention, basically, sometimes there's a little bit of a chaos going on behind the facade. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
you've
They're
proven that here.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly they're like, "Oh, it's a mic. People will hear me." I mean, I think that's the perfect the Joker trying to be a stand-up comedian is freaking perfect because like everybody knows a unhinged weirdo who there's a mic who people will pay attention to me. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
And I also feel like your pursuit of acting, I wonder if it's connected to what you mentioned about Barney when you said that, you liked Barney because your parents were busy and Barney seemed like someone who was paying attention to you. And I think a lot of people, when they pursue things like acting or when they pursue the arts, thinking about American Idol, like they want a panel of people to give them approval, basically. And with acting, you need a casting director to see you audition and give you approval. Do you like official stamps of approval?
Oh yeah, I love organization. I don't know. I grew up in the military, so and it never really ended when you have a military parent. So like just structure like that I like, but I don't like school and I don't like school grades because I
No.
think a lot of that stuff is not a clear win. It's like in the I mean, I guess with like math or something, but even then I don't know. I mean, I guess yes and no. Like I think I like the acknowledgement that I'm not, because I constantly feel like when I like talk or I try to explain a point to some people, it's not always super clear. And when I can get people to connect on a certain thing, it makes me feel less alien to
Hmm.
people.
That's how I feel about stand up as well. Like, I'm not doing it as much, but when I think about why I do it, I enjoy the sense that by getting a laugh from a particular joke, that's the most that I feel understood. We can talk about how you went from the craft of acting to the craft of drawing and animation. Do you get that from those things?
No, it's completely different. I, you mean from drawing and animation? Do I get the connected validation of others?
Yeah.
No, it is completely different.
Then why do you
And
do it?
uh, it's my only friend. Like it will always be, other than probably my fiance, like it is the one consistency that has always guided me in my life. It is a form of meditation. And I've always been good at it, like from birth. Like I could draw five fingers. I knew to draw five fingers on people at the age of 2. And then I always just kind of did it. But my parents hate art. And like
Oh my god, they sound like cartoon characters now. You have military parents who hate art.
yeah, they love sports. They love fitness. They're like golden retrievers. They're I mean, they don't like as black and white like hate
Yeah, yeah.
art, but they like are not like a super like my fiance's like parents. They're like really excited about anything creative and they're like interested about it. My parents don't give an F. Like they just like they like athleticism and like traditional like I don't know, math and stuff like that. They're
Oh,
science people. They like science and like farming and stuff. But which is weird because my dad's actually pretty good at art and my mom is too. But I think they were drilled in as kids to not pursue that, and it is a pretty hard life. But yeah, like I was always doing art and stuff, but my parents were really pushing like sports and
yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't know, sports mostly.
Oh. How do you feel about sports?
I like it now, but I absolutely hated it as a kid.
Same,
It was
same.
just I only did sports. I did a lot of sports. I was like on like every sports team except football and basketball in like high school, or all the cool sports. Like I didn't do baseball either, but my dad had a thing because we had the farm, and he was like, you can either do a sport after school, or you can come and work on the farm. And I absolutely hated working on the farm because it sucks and it's dangerous. And so I was like on the wrestling team. I did track and field. I did lacrosse. I did tennis. I did all that. I didn't like any of it. I liked wrestling, but you know, nobody really likes wrestling.
What is it like doing sports when you don't enjoy it? Like, how do you feel at the end of a game, at the end of a practice?
I mean, you're in really good shape because you're working out all the time.
Yeah.
But
I
and
guess
I
you get
just kind of
endorphins in that way.
well, like yeah, you do, but like I think everybody's mad. Like the older you get, like in high school, I went to such a small high school, so anybody could get on the team.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
like they'd be like, "Oh, Grant's on the team. Like, why are you here?" And I'm like, "I just don't want to go home, man." So like, I just off and like try to like do like the least amount of like just bench me. Like I just don't want to go home. Like, that's the thing. I just don't want to get yelled at all the time and like have to like shovel literal like beats that. Like beats having to fix a tractor that's trying to explode all the time. like I don't want to do that. So they were all mad, but actually weirdly when I was on, we're kind of jumping around everywhere, but I'm just gonna go with it. You could edit it in order or whatever.
It's fine. It's fine.
Just how my mind works. But I actually found out that I could make people laugh when I was on the track team, because track team people are probably like the least judgmental and kind of smart. And so like the cool kids on the track team in high school thought I was really funny, and they kind of endorsed me. And so then everybody on the bus, they would have me just do rants about the grocery store I worked at. And it's like a grocery store that our customer base is just like, insane hillbillies. And so I would just talk about all the weird customer moments I had with we had like a guy that was like sleeping in the ceiling. Like he was like our night clerk, and he would like clean the floors, and he was like living in the grocery store. So he like slept in the ceiling in like the back of the building, and they found him. My boss was always like banging other workers like in the deli department. And so like their husbands would show up and try to fight him. That was awesome.
Wow. Wait, was it specifically people who worked in the deli department, or that's where they would do it?
He would bang them in the produce freezer or in the fridge. And then it was for some reason he was hooking up with like 2 or 3 ladies from the deli. He was cool. I liked him. Shout out. Hope you're doing well. Took out a lot. He's probably not doing well, because like every other month he would tell me about the bank loan he took out to like get a new vehicle. And so,
well, I'll probably I'll bleep his name. I don't want to get any have his information out there like that.
Yeah, that's fine.
But how much sketching were you doing at this point from Barney on? Was there an evolution of your art style?
Yeah.
I love this idea that, you're sketching at home, and then whenever your parents walk by, you just pretend you're writing math equations to appease them.
Well, so I drew a good amount, but I also read all the time, and that would make my dad really mad, because he'd be like, all he does is read.
There's something about that. Isn't it weird? I feel like people would rather see you play a video game than read a book.
I don't know.
Like, sometimes when people see you reading a book, they're just like, they're like offended.
I think my dad read all the time, but he also was like a big sports guy, and I think they just were mad that I was like an indoor kid and like didn't want to like go outside, which I don't know, it's fine, but I'd rather just read a book. Different personalities. But I was drawing, it didn't really kind of hit me because I don't know, like I was always doing something creative. Like I was writing these like stupid little plays and making my friends perform them and building like little forts and stuff. But then I moved to this small town, and on a farm that was pretty, there wasn't a lot of kids around that could come over. So, I'd just hang out with my siblings. But then that's when I really, I had to learn how to be comfortable being alone and like kind of being by myself. And so I just started drawing in like little notebooks and stuff. And then when I went to middle school, I didn't really have any friends. I was like the tallest kid, because like I was like the oldest kid in my grade, but like right on the edge. So I was older than a lot of these kids, or it seemed like it, but like I don't know. I'm just a weird kid. So like it was just hard going to middle school there. And so I didn't have a lot of friends and I had trouble paying attention in school. So I just started doodling all the time on the side of my papers, and I would create like all these worlds and stuff. And instantly from like kind of right when I hit puberty is like when I started getting kind of really into drawing. And I draw on clothes, I would draw on furniture, I draw on a boombox, and I just have a memory of like completely illustrating this boombox, and it looked so sick. It was like a Keith Haring or something. And I just remember my mom getting so mad and like screaming at me for that. I would like paint. I always kept telling my dad to let me like paint a mural on the side of our barn. Oh, yeah. And he was like, I don't want you to do it, because he hated my work. My parents hate my work. And like,
that's so sad, because like I have I mean, are you telling me you have no memory of either of your parents liking something that you drew as a child?
When I drew 5 fingers on a hand when I was 2, my mom was really stoked. But then after that, it was like downhill. I was going
to say, because that is one of the greatest joys I feel of childhood, is when you're like your parents like something that you drew. Like I have a very distinct memory of, I don't know if it was for a classroom project or what, but I drew the little cricket from the children's book. Is it called The Little Cricket? And my mom was so blown away by this.
No, my
one
parents,
of my favorite memories. Yeah.
I think that's most parents, but mine, like, they were just like, I don't know, they were kind of in their own world, doing their own thing. And so like, I mean, there was that. They liked that I don't think they cared that I drew 5 fingers on a hand, but they were like, I think they thought like, oh, he's so smart, but I think they were more concerned about my art as I hit 13, because that's when I started, because I was always doing like creative stuff, but like, I started really putting the pedal to the metal, drawing all the time when I was like 13. And they would get concerned. I think none of it was like too upsetting, but I think, me and my dad just did not get along at all, and we fought like every single day until I moved out. But I would like draw angry drawings of like him, and he's like, is that supposed to be me? Or like, oh, yeah. I would try to draw like a picture of a girl I liked, and he would just laugh and be like, that's awful. Like it was not good. But and honestly, he ain't wrong. But
your parents knew that you were trying to draw a picture of a girl that you liked.
Yeah.
That sounds like something that, if I were to do that, I would be doing that in secret. I wouldn't be like, hey, I'm
an effing idiot, man. No, I constantly throughout my entire life, ever since I got called Vagina Boy in middle school, I died inside. It was like, I'm reborn as like, I'm different now. So like, I just didn't care. And I think I was like a little too, I think being isolated like that just made me be like, I'm going to be very open and honest about everything. And, my parents, being the golden retrievers that they are just going to rip you to F and shred. Not intentionally, but it's just like, my parents are like jocks and like love, Big Bang Theory. I don't know. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. And then like I draw in middle school, and, kids, they knew it was like really good and stuff, or they were really into it. But like, I was constantly being told by my parents that like art is not a career, which in some sense it's not, but other senses it is. And, so I never took it seriously, but it was like a coping mechanism to deal with like loneliness and emotional feelings, and just like, I don't know, you could get lost in it. And I was able to remember stuff better when teachers are talking when I was drawing. Like I could really hone in and like just be able to sit still if I doodled. And so I was always doing that. Like I'd draw vehicles, or I'd draw like whole little comics and stuff. And it was just a way to like kind of exist without like dying inside. I don't know. Like it truly was like a world. You build that world to like cope with like how awful everything else is around you. Because like kids are, I like got extorted in middle school. Like kids would do all these like scams. So I got extorted by this kid. She like left a CD on the bus, and I think it was like Motown's Greatest Hits or like something stupid, or like Boys to Men, something dumb. And I just found the CD, and I was like, "Oh, cool CD!" And I put it in my backpack like a moron. And she like found this girl found me in the lunch line and said, "Hey, you stole my CD. You got to give me $40 or my brother's gonna kick your ass and stuff." And like, yeah, so like it was bad. Like, I remember like the first like week going up the stairs, these kids took a trash can and they threw it at a kid's head that was going, and it went over my head and hit this kid. And then the kids ran down and just like stomped him. And I was like, whoa, this is like a bad place, bad area. And so like I was just dealing with that, and we'd have teachers quit all the time. It was awful, but I was constantly drawing. I got called to like the principal's office once because like I drew a teacher's portrait with an axe through their head. And they were just, but like, I don't know.
That teaches you the power of art right there. You know, that I feel like that was your, what's the name of the comedian who took the photo of a severed Donald Trump head? Who am I thinking? Kathy Griffin. That was your Kathy.
Yeah. Well, I didn't intend for him to see it. I was just doing it on the back of the test that I handed to him. Like an idiot. But like I didn't hate the guy either. I think I was just bored, and it was like Halloween or it was October. And I was like, oh, this would be cool. But then he was like, do you hate me? And I was like, I can't remember his name, but I was like, no, it's Halloween. You can see that there's other Halloween stuff. And then he was like, sure it is. But, after that, and, so like I was doing that. And then, I don't know. I was playing music a lot too. That was like probably my next dip in the genre. Was like I got really into playing the guitar, but I was so bad at it. Like I just learned like the first like 5 seconds of like a song, or like the one little riff of like Seven Nation Army, and I wouldn't learn the whole song, and I would just play that over and over for like 2 hours in my bedroom.
Don't scroll away. You Are the Genre will be right back after the break. You Are the Genre is an independently produced podcast, which means that I record this in my apartment and I do it for the love, but there's also a way for you to show some financial support if that is something that interests you. There is a newsletter component to the podcast. You can find a link to it in the show notes or at youarethegenre.com, and you can subscribe to a free version or a paid version that gives you advanced episodes and updates on all the projects that I'm working on. I typically use this break in the middle of the show to promote something that I've been enjoying. One thing is a documentary that I got to see a few weeks ago called I'm George Lucas, a Connor Ratliff story. Connor Ratliff has performed as George Lucas for a number of years here in New York at a show called The George Lucas Talk Show. And now there is a documentary about it. I had the pleasure of watching this doc in a theater surrounded by fans of Connor and his George Lucas Talk Show. And there's a point about halfway into this film where it shifts from being a great document of a hilarious live show where a guy pretends to be George Lucas to a brilliant exploration of intergenerational pursuits within the arts. And as someone who grew up equally fascinated with George Lucas as both a person and character, this was a cathartic and life-affirming experience. Thank God, I'm not the only one. And if you have an equal obsession with Star Wars and George Lucas, I happen to co-host a Star Wars-themed podcast called Yub Nub, where we talk about media making from a Star Wars point of view. Connor is going to be a guest on an episode. We're dedicating the first season as we join the Sonar Podcast Network, all about George Lucas, the man and the myth. We're calling it the Summer of George, aka Hot George Summer. And we're diving into all of the media that inspired him in the creation of Star Wars and all of the media that he made leading up to the 1977 release of the first Star Wars film. So check those things out, and maybe my newsletter. Get all of the information you need at youarethegenre.com. Now, back to the episode. Where were we? Well, what do you think? Okay, this is interesting because it feels like drawing and art is your natural thing. It's the thing that you're just doing when you're bored to soothe yourself in a way, as like a free form of therapy, maybe. But then when you
Yeah.
try to do things like play the guitar, would you say that that pursuit came from a genuine space? Or would you say it came from like, I want to be cool enough to play the Seven Nation Army riff? Like, do you feel like it came from that the same sort of mental space that you
No, it definitely was like a vanity thing, as most teenage boys, but like I think I really liked writing my own songs.
uh,
Like I think that kind of comes from that, but he definitely had a exterior motivation because see the thing with drawing and doing art is that it's very isolating and people don't acknowledge you, they acknowledge the product, and so you can't really, I mean, there are famous artists, but a lot of them become famous when they're dead. like you see like assholes who are wearing like a Starry Night,
yeah, yeah.
Van Gogh dress or shirt, and or go to the stupid like VR experience, and you're like, man, that guy like really suffered, and like society just on him for his whole life, and now he's like commodified finally, and you're like, is that the goal? Like, is that like it's just I don't know,
Yeah,
but
that's the
yeah.
question we all
So
have to ask ourselves, especially what we were talking about earlier about having that need for external validation. In your creative work, you do it naturally. You said that you don't get that satisfaction of feeling seen or or like heard through it. What are the tenets of the validation that you even want from animation and art?
I want to buy a house. That's
So it's just that, but it's not like the holy grail of like Adult Swim saying like you're one of us now.
Oh, dude, I've come close. I mean, I
Yeah.
ran the Tales from the Trip show for Comedy Central, and that was dope. But
Hmm.
I think with animation, I just like it's just such a pain in the ass to like get actors scheduled and set up lights and anybody. It's a little more accessible to do film, but
Yeah.
with animation, there's not a lot of people that are mentally ill enough to pursue it for one. And then also like I feel like the kids who do approach animation are so introverted or so like Disney kids. Like they love
Hmm.
baby movies. Like they love like, the Spider-Verse and stuff. But like for me, I think I lean a little more to like the performer comedian scene. And so my ability to translate that into that medium is pretty unique and a different approach than, your standard, person who wants to work for Disney, which
Yeah.
would be cool, but I think they would effing hate me or like I wouldn't fit in there. I really don't feel like I fit in with animators for the most part, and I don't really feel like I fit in with like the writers or the comedy guys. A little bit more with the writers and comedians
Hmm.
than I do with animators because I think the animators are a little too isolated in like their safety introvert world, and I think I'm an introverted extrovert.
That's something we have in common, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw you across the room, and I was like, this guy, he gets it.
Yeah, it's when you want attention in very specific forms, and then you want that attention to go away, I think.
Well, anytime there was like a party at Comedy Central, we always found a room. We always found ourselves in like the quiet room, being like, "Yeah, I want it," and then they would come in and it'd be like, "Where's the party?" Next on Comedy Central, it's Tosh, and you're like,
Well, that's okay. Yeah, let's. I want to dedicate some time to like speeding forward to Comedy Central, but
sure,
because that like thinking about some of those parties and thinking about the state of media now, and this was just what 4 years ago, right?
yeah.
It
Can you
feels like,
believe it?
but
4 or 5,
it's
something.
crazy to think about. Like there were things that were frustrating for sure, but looking back at it now, going into a workplace that is comedy and there's offices and and it's established, and then there are office parties that truly, not in a negative way, but just felt lavish, like something out of Mad Men. Like when I think about back on it, I'm like, I can't believe that I was at these like had these huge
Fall of Rome.
yeah, intervertical, like all the things that Viacom, because it was like, every floor had a different thing, like the Paramount floor, the TV Land floor, whatever, and then a big intermingling party. It's just an insane thing to look back on. And now, we're talking in our apartments across coasts.
What is life?
But at what point did you get mentally ill enough to start pursuing art and animation in a serious way?
Yes. So there was a pivotal moment because I didn't know what I was going to do. I had good grades, but I didn't have good SAT score. And like, I didn't want to go to community college and stay on the farm because me and my dad would just like ripped each other to shreds. Like it just wasn't great. And I don't know. I just wanted to get my whole goal pretty much all through like middle and high school was to like keep my head down, get the F out of my hometown, like just get out of there and not get in trouble. Cause there's always a lot of like, my friends were always getting in trouble. Like there's always a lot of bad stuff. And so I had an art teacher. I was like walking the hallway one day and this kid who was on the track team with me, he was like, hey, this teacher wants you to talk to you, the art teacher. I was like, oh, weird. I've never spoken to her. And I didn't take art in school. I took it in middle school, but in high school, a kid got stabbed in my intro art class with a pair of scissors, like right in like the clavicle. Yeah. And so then I was like, yeah, because all the bad kids took art. And so like you could take an elective. And so it costs money to do any of the instrument classes. So it was like less bad kids. Like there were bad kids, but like you're not going to get stabbed with a scissors. And so I was like, yeah, fuck this. I'm not going to be in the art class. Also, my art teacher was really into like Native American stuff and like First Nation stuff. And I thought it was inappropriate for a white lady to be like,
way.
Yeah. And it was really weird of like how she would talk about indigenous people and just like fetishized it in a weird way. And I was just like, yeah, this is a weird vibe. There's kids getting stabbed. This lady's talking about the mysticism of like the Nez Perce people. And I was just like, yeah, I got to get out of here. This is weird vibes. And so a different art teacher and my senior year, so I hadn't taken art since like freshman year and I had like gotten out of that class. But I was always making art. I was always drawing, doing like all this kind of art all the time, but it was just really just a part of my existence, filling up tons and tons of notebooks and sketchbooks. I still have them to this day. I have like 50 of them. And she's like, I need you to take advanced placement art. Like it's like a college credit art class. Otherwise I can't keep my job. It's because she needed to like, they were doing budget cuts or something. She was like a family friend and she went to our church and I was like, fine, I'll do it. Yeah, sure. Okay. Just to help her out. And like, I didn't even take it seriously. And so when you take that class, you have to pick a project that you're going to do for that class. It's not like different assignments. You pick an art piece that you're going to do, and then you're going to show it at the end of the year and get a grade. And, I thought that would be an easy credit and it would literally just be two people in the class. So you just went into this art studio and kind of drew and doodled or did whatever you want. But all of a sudden, when I took that class, she was really effing cool and was like, her dad was like a big advertising guy and did a bunch of ad campaigns. And she was just like really encouraging. And I came up with this concept of doing like a Where's Waldo kind of triptych of 12 pieces of 18 by 24 kind of cutaways. So you could see it was New York City and it was different parts of New York that all connected, these 12 giant pieces of art. And they were super busy, heavily illustrated. And you could see the underground. So you could see what was happening above ground in the city. And then you could see like, a different setting. So like it'd be Wall Street, but then you could see like a crazy setting and it would be hyper detailed. It was like super, super detailed. So like the first day I made this map and I wrote down like, it's like how you do like a story tree. And I just made this huge connected map of like themes. And it just sparked something in my brain. And I was like, oh man, this is how you organize a creative idea. And like, I started planning out the process. And, you know, other teachers got involved. Like one teacher gave me like a light table so I would sketch it out, and then I would trace it in ink on this light table, and then I'd watercolor it. And these, you know, it'd take a month to do one. I started getting faster with it. So I was doing that. And then somebody from the Maryland Institute College of Art, Micah, is this art school in Baltimore, came and saw it. And she was like, you should come to our portfolio day. And I had just visited this one college. It was like for ups that like don't have good grades. And like, and it literally, the college looked like my hometown. It seemed like my hometown. I effing hate my hometown. And so I was like, it was like conservative mountain town. And in like, you know, Western Maryland, West Virginia. I was like, oh, I don't want to go there. It probably would have been fine. Well, when the lady came up to me and she was like, oh, you should, I'd be like, yeah, right, lady. Like, I'm going to go to an art portfolio day. I'm not an asshole. And so, because I was like, artists are idiots. And like, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of this town. And also, like, I've been told my whole life that my art is bad. And like, my parents don't like it. Like, it's not, you know, it's cartoons. They don't like that. My parents really only love like self-portraits that are done, look like photographs, and like Georgia O'Keeffe.
They probably love AI art now then.
Yeah. So does every client of mine. And I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
What am I going to do now?
Well, yeah, quickly, how are you feeling about that right now?
I hate it. It sucks.
Yeah.
They're assholes. They lie to your teeth, and they're like, oh, it's just going to be a tool you can use. And then they don't finish the sentence, because what they're really saying in their head is, it's just a tool you can use to replace you.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's, like, everything is like that right now too. Like a lot of copywriting gigs and things. Like if you look at the descriptions, they're basically like, some of them are outright saying this is a job to train AI how to do this. And when the AI art became a thing, it was crazy. Like I immediately saw how I would have a direct choice in my own life of like, if I'm going to pitch a sci-fi movie, I could pay a human being to make some concept art, or I could type some keywords into AI to get something that's passable enough to put on a presentation. And that's crazy. Like it's just insane how quickly we've gotten to this point. And that thing is only going to escalate month by month until we're in a totally different concept of like what basic jobs are. And I think it's scary because we all thought that the arts were the cutoff point of where technology could interrupt jobs. But now it's like AI is going to take away Uber drivers' jobs. It's going to take away
it's going to take all our jobs. And then we're just going to have to, I mean, I thought, I always thought, I was like, oh, well, I can always like make like Pokemon cards. Like Pokemon is a fictional economy, but it's huge. But now AI has created that. You're like, oh, goddamn. The Skynet has definitely come for us in the form of Chat GPT. But like, I've had clients now. I used to have clients make me like mood boards on Pinterest of like what they want, because nobody knows what they want, but I'm trying to like get a vibe. Now they use AI art, and they're like, can you make this? Can you make this exact thing? And I'm like, oh, that's depressing. Like, I don't want to copy robots copied art. Like, just use that. Leave me alone. Like, I don't know, man. Like, you just I don't want to end up like all of my art professors who like never adapted to like digital production and like animation and like art, and just like kept using the tools in the old ways. And I'm like, well, maybe now with this I can figure out, I don't know, I guess I'll just become a slam poet and live under a bridge. I don't fucking know. Like, I mean, when you're an artist, you don't love it. It's fucking miserable, but you're always going to be doing it. Like, it's just like, it's like being a heroin addict or something. Like, you can't really quit. Like, there's always going to be some kind of methadone or some shit to it. It's a very thankless, selfish, stupid thing to do, but you just do it because that's who you are. That's being an artist.
And I love tracking how everyone's trying to adapt to this, because even like down to stand-up comedy, so much of that has changed in terms of clips. And like, it's crazy at Comedy Central, it was someone's job to put captions on a video.
Yeah, Ethan.
Technology has taken that job, taken that job away. When I first got to New York, I didn't have a job yet, and so I was transcribing audio, and so much of that technology has taken away like the need for a human being. Now they maybe just need to do a couple spell checks and grammar checks on what an algorithm spit out of a transcript. So
Dude, I used to like Photoshop for like a onion type website, and I just did like 12 images a day, photoshopping like stupid like fake sports scenes. That job would not have existed now. Like they'd just use Chat GPT and be like, show me, I don't know, Michael Jordan eating cheesecake. And I
yeah,
used to have to Photoshop that and it would look good, but like now that's gone. And
yeah.
it's wild. I mean, it was a crappy job, but it was kind of my first break into the game. But yeah, it's a trip, man. And I feel like it's a dark future, but also everything's a dark future, so I don't care. Like, it. Let's go into this dark Blade Runner Beyond. I'm excited.
I feel like a key to it all, though, is let me know if you identify with this as well. But instead of specifically chasing the ever evolving algorithms, I think the most important thing is to just focus on the genuine thing that you want to do, because that has the most sustainable validation that you could ask that you could ask for. And of course, it is important to understand, what makes a certain type of project work well on Instagram versus Facebook versus TV versus YouTube or whatever. But that becomes too daunting at some point, I feel like. When we were at Comedy Central, you created something called Tales from the Trip, which was a huge hit. And I feel like you must feel amazing about that. But I know that there are also some frustrations that came along with it. Describe the show for people who haven't heard of it. And then just tell me, what your feelings are about that now.
Oh yeah. I mean, so it's called Tales from the Trip, and it was, like in the vein of like Tales from the Tour Bus, or like any kind of like that Vice had like party stories that were like animated. And so like I knew these guys at the Creek in the Cave in Long Island City that were doing this show where they would take psychedelics and then they would tell like a story while on psychedelics. And then they would have me take psychedelics and then draw while they're telling this story. And so we'd all just lose our minds on mushrooms at like midnight in Queens. It was the best. It was awesome. So I pitched this idea to Comedy Central because I don't know. I just was like over editing like McDonald's sponsored Twitter talk shows. And I was like, I want to do something. Here we go, man. I'm shameless about trying to get things through because like, why not? I'm not your friend. Let's do it. Like, I don't care if I'm not offending anybody, but I'm going to be bold. Like, just reach out to people. And so I was like, hey, I made this concept, I want to interview this comedian, Shane Moss, and then I want to animate his like psychedelic stories, because I thought animation could really lend to it, because he had this one story about DMT that went viral on YouTube that a ex-girlfriend of mine showed me like a couple of years before. And I was like, oh man, this is hot. This could be really good. What's something that you can't put on TV, you can't put on streaming you couldn't put on streaming until they did. So we filmed Shane, and then I animated it all on my own. And yeah, and I think they didn't even want to put it. They said no originally to put it on YouTube. And I told our boss that I was like, just fire me, just put it on. And if I get in trouble, I hate it here. I want to leave, because like I just felt like such a weirdo there, and just like I was over it. And then it blew up, and because I knew that there was a demand for it, and because of like Reddit and people love Shane. And then they were like, can you do like 6 more? So like when any studio or any company says no to you, like they don't know what they're talking about. Just do it. And I don't know, take some risks, apologize after, because like companies are afraid to do anything like cool. And so then it was 6 episodes, and then I just started figuring out that if you do stuff really cheaply and quickly, and it has a certain genre base, you can kind of really grow it out without a ton of hands in the pot. And so it was really just me for a while, and then I was able to add people, and then I also really hustled. So like I booked all the talent. So like I would DM people, and since I had the Comedy Central brand behind me, a lot of people would get back to me. So I DM people on Instagram, like celebrities, like all the time.
Yeah.
And like Patton Oswalt said no, but he was really nice. And like, a lot of rappers like are always down because they don't give a fuck. Musicians don't care about their brand too much because it makes them look cool, talking about drugs. And people really got into it because it really lended to the animation had a purpose. Like I feel like there are so many shows out there now where it's like it's animated but doesn't need to be, and they don't really utilize animation's potential. And I think when you're going to make an animated show, you need to figure out why, or how you can like. Yeah, like Big Mouth has like kids talking about sex and like ghost creatures and stuff. So like I guess that kind of makes sense why that needs to be animated. But like I don't know, there's like shows like Bob's Burgers that doesn't need to be animated, but they do it because it's easier to. I don't know why. Like, I just don't understand. Like, I guess they're copying The Simpsons.
I'm also fascinated by specifically like King of the Hill, which I feel is the ultimate show that doesn't need to be animated.
But works. I just think it was a point of time because like there's no way anybody could get that made. I don't know. Like you see other stuff on Netflix, but like King of the Hill looks really good. And then you see the new model where everything's kind of like puppeted or looks super clean. And it doesn't really have that traditional animation that I think we've really lost. And I just feel like it doesn't look as good. It just feels, even the writing feels like, everything feels like it's made by AI too. Like, I don't know. It's just, when everybody's all worried about AI, I'm like, have you seen a Marvel movie? Like,
I know, yeah. I mean, that's like the biggest thing. It feels like, when you think about like how much plastic surgery people do or how all the digital filters that people put over their own videos, it's like AI is becoming us and we are becoming AI at the same time. Like no one's really trying to diverge from it. We're all just trying to become the
one
same
consciousness, one entity.
Yeah.
The hive mind. Kill the individuals.
Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do want to kind of pivot to the last question, which is, what is your relationship to the first craft? So the first craft that you wanted to pursue was acting. Having gone through everything that you've done now, having really taken this, maybe hobby is the wrong word, but this thing that you love doing just naturally, art, and taking that all the way into the point now where that's your career. When you think back on the version of yourself that wanted to be on stage and wanted to act, how do you feel about that person? How do you feel about that pursuit?
Oh man, I don't think it'll ever go away. I always want to do it. It just makes me sad all the time. like auditioning makes me sad. Like failing makes me sad. Like it just makes you feel sweaty. But I don't think it will ever go away. It's fun. But like I think the older I get, the less I care about it. Like, I think I would get jealous or be like, oh, why can't I just like, I'll make excuses and be like, well, if I had a rich dad, or like, like if I didn't have all this art school debt, I'd be able to do that. But now that I'm like older, I think I've made a pretty good path. Like I make little videos and I'm still in stuff. And if the opportunity presented itself to do something, and that, I'd definitely do it. But I think having my practice and doing animation and drawing, and it just really centers me, and it makes me feel good to like, at least I'm kind of in that world. I mean, being an artist is just such a bummer too, because like especially in LA, like everybody steals your ideas, like all your stuff is like commodified in that way, and like nobody remembers you want to, like, I make art because I'm terrified at the core of it, at like the true core of creation. I want to live on after I die because I am so scared. I don't believe in the afterlife. I just believe that you're just gone, and like it's like turning the lights off. And I just want to live as an impacted memory for the next generations, you know, because I was just so isolated and sad as a kid. And so my art is maybe to make it a little bit better for society in a selfish way for the next you know, reincarnation of what a mentally ill weirdo I am that has to like go live on a farm. Like maybe it will be better because I made a cartoon that teaches people to not ban drugs. I don't know. Like, but like you're just trying to exist and change because like that's what art is. It's trying to communicate your philosophy, and when your philosophy is not with the main paradigm, you create content and work to hopefully shift it in that way. And that's what an artist is you're just a very tiny paradigm shifter. And so in the relation to being like an actor, wanting that, I think the art will live on longer. And that's kind of the pursuit, you know?
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful place to end. But I did have another question, and depending on how you answer this, this will be where we end. Just thinking about like, you have a very specific style. Anyone can visually see something that is a grant produced piece of art or animation. And at Comedy Central, you created the show Tales from the Trip that essentially belongs to Comedy Central and still belongs to Comedy Central now that you're gone. So I'm just curious, like, how do you feel about that? Do you feel positive about how you can utilize the fact that you created something that is very popular and has an official brand stamp of approval as a calling card as you move on? Or do you wish that maybe you produced this somehow on your own and it still became a hit and you retained the rights over it?
No, because I can do way better stuff. like that was like the baby stuff. Like no, because like I think it's a great. Honestly, I don't regret it. I loved working at. I loved a lot of stuff about working at Comedy Central. I love, you know, working with you, working with like it, and it pushed me and made my work so much better. But yeah, like it does suck that it paid off my student loans. That was the biggest thing, and it was a lot. And it really effed up my life for like 10 years. My art school was like, here's a ton of debt. We're not going to help you. And I was like, oh man, this sucks. And then it was like a decade of rejection from every place. And then they took a chance and, you know, so I was able to pay off those loans. Super stoked about that. And then once I did that, I was like, I'm out. You know, like I was like, I got what I needed out of this. And now I'm going to go and do the good stuff. Like it was a cool project, but you know, I think that's just a tip of the iceberg, man. Like every time I make a piece, like, you know, I think some people who make work with like, and this goes back to like the acting thing, they're precious with it. But with me, I'm just like, nah, that's just a shell. You know, I just shed it and I'm on to the next thing, man. And it's going to be that. Like my favorite genre of music is like, sadly, it's country music, but I like the weird out there, you know, outlaw country or like the country singers that aren't like the pop guys who keep making albums. And even like folk people like John Prine, he made this amazing album before he died. And those guys keep making these great albums like Swamp Dogg and stuff. They just make these great albums when they're like 90. And like, I just think they're better than like, you know, pop stars don't keep making albums that are good because they're just a concept, but those are real people. Like those country artists living in Fresno are amazing. Like the writing about like Johnny Paycheck wrote that song, The Old Violin, or he sang it or whatever. And just seeing that, you really just see a full spectrum when it comes to like those old cowboy singers. And I just see that. I'm excited to see where my work is going. It's already changing, you know. I'm doing this series Divorced Dads that's kind of hot right now, and I'm doing like a weird anime style and you know, just constantly making stuff. We're making stuff. We made those comics. I was sick, and you just keep going through, I'm very different person from when I started Tales, and we're just keep changing. And I think society really just sees that one moment where the economy decided to market it and be like, okay, we're going to put money on this, because like I've had other projects that I think could have just been as hot as Tales, but nobody wanted to put money on it, and so you just kind of wait until somebody puts a bet on it, and it pops off. And likewise, I mean, we worked on that one meme show, remember? We predicted the meme economy, man.
We did, yeah. And
everybody,
I don't think that's anywhere online. I think Comedy Central is embarrassed by it at the end of the day.
I got yelled at so bad. We made that like mad meme show.
I'm gonna find it. Someone must have that somewhere.
It's buried with chocolate news or whatever.
Yeah. I want to see it again, so I can just I don't have the proper context in my mind of it. I should have downloaded it when it came out.
It was chaos. Anyway, yeah, I hope that's a fun ramble, but yeah, I hope that answered.
I know, that's perfect.
You can cut out half of this.
No, it's great. Thanks for doing the show, Grant.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
Big thanks to Grant Lindahl for stopping by the show. If you want more from him, go to grantdraws.com. Freddie Nunez created and sings the You Are the Genre theme song, and Adam Smith produced it. Next week, comedian, writer, and film critic Jordan Searles joins me on the podcast. But if you become a paid subscriber to my newsletter, you can listen to it a week ahead of the normies. This is Tim Barnes signing off with your weekly reminder that you, yes you, are the genre.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do. I'd like to know the things that specifically make